Welcome to EdTech du Jour. I'm Dr. Melissa Kaulbach, and today Dr. Jeri Nowakowski is joining me, and we're going to chat about effective assessments to use in the online learning space. Unfortunately, Jeri, we know that many instructors simply rely on quizzes and exams, but we know there's so many more opportunities to assess learning. So tell me about your use of pre- and post assessments in your courses.
Sure, Melissa. Yep, I think once you know what your learner outcomes are, our faculty typically begins with a pre-post self-assessment. Some people call them knowledge surveys. And what we do is try to come up with items that specifically cover the topics that are going to be taught throughout the course and allow the student to self-assess what kind of knowledge they have before the course begins. This also tells the professor how much do students already know. By the time the student gets to, when we used to use it at the beginning of the fourth module, we would give the identical post-survey self-evaluation. And at that point, the student looks at it and says, well, I've really learned this information, or it gives them a heads up right before the final to say, I need to review. But those self-assessment questions are only as good as they are specific about exactly what competency, exactly what knowledge you want a student to master, so they can give you the most accurate answer and walk away saying, well, I really learned a great deal in the course.
I think from an instructor's perspective, don't you think also it identifies potential gaps in learning?
Absolutely. And places where as an instructor you can step in and add, and online especially, more information. But it provides an ongoing and in two places in time measure for students to actually themselves self-evaluate, what did I learn in this course? And that's valuable.
That's true, and I know we live in such a data-driven environment right now, and it does provide data. So
it does.
The institution can use it as well as the course review. So when I think of the kinds of assessments that most instructors use, I see a lot of quizzes, exams, and even if it's low stakes, it's typically true-false questions, fill in the blank, or simply writing a paper. And what I like to use in my courses mainly are cumulative projects. I'm a big project fan. For me, I feel like you can accomplish the formative and the summative goals, because if you're doing a project and I chunk it in the first week, you identify how to make that project relevant in your workplace. And you may identify the topic and I approve it, and then weeks 2 through 6, let's say, you're turning in a deliverable every week. So it's helping me as the instructor manage my grading, and it's helping the student who might be tempted to procrastinate really keep up and have their deliverables. But during the formative period before the end, when they turn in their final paper, I'm providing feedback, and then in the final week, they really take that feedback, incorporate it, and really they're just assembling their project. One piece I do like to add is I really like to give the students an opportunity to present their project to the class. And this is where I think you can really incorporate different tools. Logster EDU is basically an interactive poster. So for a principalship course I'm teaching, I had a student use it and they put a media clip from a documentary. You can put hyperlinks, you can put text, you can put photos. So it's just a good way. It's almost like scrapbooking on a poster.
It gives a rich response. What I love about your strategy is it allows you to get to many higher level learning,
right,
taxonomically lessons, so that it's got to be a rich experience for students.
Absolutely. So in your courses, besides pre and post assessments, what's kind of your go-to? What assessments do you use?
I think the strongest assessments and assignments from my perspective are case-based. Even when you're going to do a multiple choice question, if you start out with a case-based scenario and say, for example, here's a principal and he's giving feedback to a teacher based upon a series of performance evaluations, and you give them a paragraph or two about that feedback, and then give them some foils, some options that say, all right, what was best practice and what perhaps was not, so that they give it a choice. They're doing, again, taxonomically, a little closer to, instead of recall, evaluation. The other way we use case studies is often to just use a case where you describe, for example, a teacher, two teachers doing classroom management, or two scenarios where you're trying to manage a classroom and the student is able to compare and contrast which of this reflects best practice. And of course, ideally, if you have enough instructional support and time, I think if you can say to a student, we'd like you to apply this back in your own setting and write an essay or deliver a project that reflects what you've learned in this application. That's about the most robust assignment you can give. What's even better about that is if not only you have a rubric they can self-evaluate with, but it opens the opportunity as well for peer evaluation.
I agree, Jeri. I think it's really important to offer plenty of opportunities for students to demonstrate their knowledge, and by providing a variety of ways, whether it's a Glogster or Prezi or PowerPoint, and varying the types of assessments, we're also addressing academic integrity, because you don't have a really prescribed assessment and people fear in the online space that people are sharing answers. It reminds me of when I defended my dissertation. My opening slide was this. And the reason I like it is because basically it says, for a fair selection, everyone has to take the same exam. Everyone climb this tree. So obviously you have an elephant, a fish, etc. So we want to make sure that we're providing
opportunities for
absolutely
everybody. And online can do that extremely well, actually.
Yes.
Another example of how to make learning authentic and engaged is peer review. And there is an increasing amount of information about how to do peer review well. And I think also about how to make it more rigorous and trustworthy among students. So I think faculty would do well to look at strategies for using peer review. I think it's not only being able to take a rubric and evaluate your own work, but the process of having 3 other people perhaps evaluate your work leads to a really rigorous learning experience and a lot of social interaction and exchange. So I think we'll see more and more of that in online learning and online courses.
I agree, and I think that helps build the community of learners and the community of practice. So thank you so much for being here
You're
today
welcome.
and discussing assessments, and thank you for joining us in this episode of EdTech du Jour.